we want to thank you very much for running for office. We know it's a very difficult thing to do in a lot of
challenging.
ways. It takes a lot. It takes a lot to step forward.
Yes.
It means that you have to be out in public and be ready to be seen, and it's part of what allows this democratic process to work. So we really do thank you for being here, and thank you for being part of the process. So the first
Thank
question
you for
I
that.
have is, you're welcome. Have you read the state constitution? Since you're running for office as a representative, I was wondering what your familiarity is with the state constitution.
The 1978 Constitution, yes. Is that what you're talking about? Yes.
Well, I'm talking about the Constitution that's here in 2020, but yes, the Constitution as amended. Absolutely.
Oh, okay. No, I have not.
Okay. So that might be a good thing to do, since that will be that is where you'll be getting your power from. Power flows from Constitution to state to local. So that's one very important thing. Yeah. So the first question I have for you is, what is your reason for running? What is it that in 2 or 3 minutes, what is it that actually is your reason for running for this particular House seat?
I suppose bringing a balance to the legislature. Of course, it's all of the things that I want to do for my district. The things that we strive for: clean air, clean water, working on all the problems that we have in our district. But just to bring a balance of ideas to the legislature. I consider myself a pretty wise person, a pretty educated person, and so I just felt it's time to step up. I just want to bring some common sense to the legislature, and of course, help with the problems in my district, my county, and my state.
Great, I appreciate that. Out of a lot of the people that have been we've been talking to, especially with the COVID happening and the kind of reset button that we're hitting right now, there's been quite a bit of talk about the possibility of there being a county Department of Agriculture, that we take care of our own county's needs for agriculture. Would you be willing to support that as a state legislator for us to be able to have our own independent Department of Agriculture?
Absolutely. That's one of the main reasons I'm getting involved. Just seeing the farming that's begun here and knowing that food independence is so important for us and importing all of our foods. And as a gardener myself, especially more now, like we all are, that's one of my main reasons for getting involved. Yes, community involvement, and even some great ideas that I have about being able to provide leases to help with low-income people to be able to maybe lease ag land reasonably and create communities that where people can become agriculturally driven communities and start all of this 230,000 acres, we can start to farm it ourselves. So the answer in short is yes. And I have many ideas on that.
What is your idea regarding, homelessness? We have a real major challenge with that as it stands. Well, and a lot of people are only 1 or 2 paychecks away from being in their cars and homeless. What do you see as being, what are your ideas about that?
Well, we have people who are on the verge of homelessness, and then we have homeless. So, I see somehow, if I could just make it happen now, which is very difficult, I somehow envision mixing agriculture, even mental health department and drug abuse, to create, you might say tiny homes, but I know from my earlier years in California, we had farm workers homes which were kind of like tiny homes that mixed in with agriculture. And I could see where those people could be brought into work, trade, somehow worked into the agricultural communities, where we could start to provide work with mental health, with drug rehabilitation. As far as the people who are on the verge of homelessness, that's sort of why I'm running as a conservative, in that I just see less government, more 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 industry. We know that tourism is. We'd like to phase it out a little bit or a lot, and bring in other industries, but it gets involved with the Jones Act and the cost of shipping and products here and here. So somehow, if we could create more business to create more jobs, that isn't so dependent on tourism, and we're really finding it out right now. We've gone from a really strong economy to almost nothing, or down quite a bit. So I see more jobs, more income, less depending on the government to take care of us, and somehow mixing it in with farm workers and perhaps tiny home communities, you might call it. So there are many ideas. I'm just open to all of that, but agriculturally centric, so we can become food independent and less shipping in food. Does that answer your question somewhat?
Absolutely. And I'd like to pass it on from here to Bruce.
Okay.
Robin, first off, you could talk a little softer because you're overmodulating your microphone. You sound better if you talk a little softer. You don't have to project.
Great. I'm a radio announcer, so pardon me.
Yeah. And a good one at that.
We start up live tomorrow, but that's off topic.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So homelessness was the big buzzword last election, but this election, the big buzzword is, all the people who've lost their jobs now and are, struggling economically. Now that's less of an issue for the upcountry because, it's more of a local population upcountry and less tourist-based. But what is your plan and ideas of how to restart the economy, how to get people their economy back with this COVID situation?
Well, it's a long conversation. I have a feeling that once the kapu is lifted, or once tourists are able to return, things, if allowed to, it can go back to what we had as normal. I believe I'm going to go to the same restaurants I was going to, and so on and so forth. I work in the wedding industry, so I see it every day from Kapalua to Wailea. I work with the tourists, and so if the tourists return, I'll get there. When the tourists return, I assume everything could go back to the normal. Not that we want to go back to that normal, but I'll talk softer. Pardon me. Mm-hmm. Not that we necessarily ideally want to go back to that normal, but every day I do see people of all races and all from all walks of life working in those hotels, working in the restaurants, the businesses that even up country, somehow we all seem to be fed by that tourism. How we get past tourism, that's a whole different topic. I see our industrial areas down by the new Safeway, and we're slowly, getting business in. But we have to find solutions for that. Whether we can get some of those 80,000 factories that supposedly are moving back from China to perhaps stop here, and maybe an Apple assembly plant, but it gets involved with, again, the Jones Act and shipping. You, for one, I'm sure know how much it costs to get a container here, and trying to ship parts here so that our kids don't have to leave the island, but they can maybe get involved in some high-tech jobs, returning back from China. I don't know the answer, but I can find the answer. I can work with people to help find those answers, and we certainly need it. As far as having all the answers now, I don't know the answers, but I do know we need to diversify, and somehow we have to find that solution.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you.
How would you describe what experiences you have that qualify you for a state level elected office job?
Well, in the last 5 years, I've really focused on Hawaiian history, and not only the Austronesian migrations and how we started here, but especially when King Kamehameha the third created the Constitution in 1843, and he created the first legislatures. So in my studies, I became fascinated with each king's legislature, and as they evolved, and as you know, in 1843, the first Constitution, it opens up with all people are of one blood, and we're all created equal, very much like the U.S. Constitution. And so as they developed the three branches of government, the executive, legislative, and judicial branches of government, in studying how it evolved up all the way to Kalakaua and even Liliuokalani, I became fascinated with the process of not only just the wisdom that was involved in making wise decisions with the amount of money that we have to deal with and how it's dealt with. But I think just bringing my common sense into the legislature and offsetting, I'm slightly right of center. I'm kind of a centrist. So I find myself right in the middle. Whereas we seem to be very left-leaning towards more government, more spending, and I'm just worried about how we spend, and so I think just bringing my sort of a little bit to the right of being more conservative with our tax dollar, and just putting my 2 cents in. I just got through the Republican candidate training, and I got to speak a lot with some of the people that are in the legislature now, and I really got a feel of how they operate. And though I'm not in harmony with the Republican Party as an ideology, or the Democrat Party, I fall somewhere centrist in the middle, more of a John F. Kennedy. I do believe that we need to conserve our tax dollars and spend them wisely. So just being in with the 51 legislators and being able to be that voice, somewhat of reason, no less borrowing. We're just about to borrow a lot more money for the state, and so just to chime in and be part of that circle of wisdom or lack thereof. Pardon my humor.
Thank you very much for that, Robin.
Okay.
Thank you. And would someone give Mark Sheehan a call too to get him on?
Okay. Yeah, and I'm going to turn this over to Laura.
I just texted Mark, so okay.
Okay, Laura, you're up.
So, there. Okay. So, hi. So,
Hi, Laura.
Hi. So I'm wondering what you feel about 5G. Having that as a network in Hawaii, and if you think it's safe to just have it installed everywhere, or should we wait, or what do you feel about
the question is, I think the question Laura's trying to ask is, do you have any thoughts or ideas about 5G?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, I do. So I'm very careful about jumping on board one way or the other. We're very emotional about things, and of course we want health is very important. So I do a lot of research on everything under the sun. So 5G is one of my pets as well. So before I become hysterical, which I almost am about 5G, I have a 5G phone here, and it works really well. And I have seen everything from it's going to affect the enzyme secretions in my body, and it's going to harm me. To
5G and your phone is not the same thing.
Okay, please let him finish, Laura.
All right.
That's fine. That's great. And I don't mind debating a little, but I'm just going to no, thank you. I thank you for that. But there is the square inverse law, so I don't think we can escape that. I think that 5G on schools is terrible. 5G may be terrible altogether. And until there's really great studies on it, I don't understand, other than money, why it's being put on us right now. There is the other side of it too, is that even those small waves, there is a science that says it doesn't penetrate the skin, and that we are being overly hysterical about it. I don't know the answer, but I'd like to know the answer. I would probably vote for more studies and less radiation.
Okay.
And,
thank you. I have one other question. Is the governor wants mandatory vaccines for children, and I'm wondering if you agree with that or opposed.
I'm an anti-vaxxer.
No.
So that kind of spells it there, with the adjuvants in them, and not to mention all of the fetal tissue and all of the. If you've watched Vaxxed, then I'm sort of on board with her. The buses of nurses that traveled around and and met the parents. So I'm an anti-vaxxer, basically. I'd rather we build our immune system, and that's a whole subject in itself. So I'll leave it right there with a very simple answer on that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Robin, I have a question about really the lifeblood of the island and our water supply, and also our natural resources. And my question is, do you see a necessity for full financial disclosure and transparency to members of the Board of Land and Natural Resources who effectively make decisions involving hundreds of millions of dollars of natural resources, often for the benefit of private business interests, but who works, as an unpaid volunteer? So if elected, what would you do to bring about needed changes in the way our natural resources are managed and also distributed, and how these people are empowered?
Well, I certainly stand for complete transparency in government. Those things should be all above board, and we should know exactly what our unelected and elected officials are doing. As far as natural resources, that's a very broad subject. I'd like to deal with everything individually, and I feel I know what the answer that you're looking for, and I think I agree with you. I'm sure I would. When it comes to water issues, I believe that's one of the reasons I'm leaving my very content and peaceful life to enter into the chaos of politics. I'm certainly not doing it for the money, because I probably make 4 times more than I would make as a legislator. But I am concerned about the water issues. I'm concerned about the water in country, for instance. And I'm concerned about our farmers in the valley. This valley needs to be farmed. We know we have Monsanto. With last I checked, they had $6 million gallon a day wells, and I don't really like the idea of them going to radioactive frankenseeds and projects that don't necessarily benefit us here. Though I would like to be able to communicate with Monsanto and get the real dirt and get them to maybe become a benevolent, organic, harmonious company. But I don't need their money. And I would like to know that our elected officials and our NGOs and everyone else that's here who's lobbyists aren't abusing our natural resources, because it's for us here. We could feed this entire island chain with this with this island that we have here. I want to see that the water is able to go into the ocean a little bit through all the streams so that it is able to feed the fish, and we need that brackish water there as well, and our terraformers and the people who have properties along the rivers. But I still would like to see water flowing through the aqueduct and helping us in the valley. So it's a complicated question.
It is when we start to deal with the entire ecosystem and trying to bring things back to balance. But I hear that, again, you would look at making those shifts and changes with that overall governance that we have right now at this point in time.
Yeah, Hawaii first, Maui first, yes.
Again, just in terms of your position over as a state representative has to do with education also. And I'm very concerned about the school systems that we have right now,
Yes.
and how a lot of our resources and funding goes towards Oahu, and seeing it that it's Oahu centric, that then what comes back doesn't seem to reflect what was put out, and a lot of the money disappears, seems like an administrative cost, and very little money comes back to support infrastructure, and also for good teachers, having teachers also who will remain, because on average they're leaving after about 2 years. How would you address the whole education system that we presently have, and looking at making shifts and changes so it's more effective?
Yes. Again, the pie chart of our expenditures. University of Hawaii is the Department of Education is quite a large part of that pie. We have a teacher shortage in the islands as well. And the Hawaii Teachers Association has asked me in an essay what I would do about that. I want to see things kind of go back to the way they were. I'm not sure about Common Core and the results that we're getting from Common Core. The education issue, getting teachers here, making it more attractive for them. And then again, it's my voice in the legislature being able to speak out so that I can address those things in a more conservative way. That is, one, I have to listen to all of the teachers and all of the constituents here. The only way I can really get a real picture of it is getting closer to the people and being able to make those wise decisions. Like you expressed to me here, you could, if you talk to me further, I'd have more of a sense of what it is that you're driving at. Only through the legislature and the Senate are we able to divide that pie up in different slices per se. You voiced your dissatisfaction. I'm looking at the children and wondering what they're taught. It's not like when I was young. When I graduated from school, I knew quite a bit. You've seen many of the man on the street, and you ask the children these simple questions about government, and they don't know. So education is a broad subject. I'm not sure I exactly addressed your question. But,
I just have one more specific aspect of that, because seeing that right now, our education system is Oahu-centric, and for most states throughout the United States, really, is that it's every county has their own school district that they are in charge of. Would you like to see some similar changes where we are more like the norm and have county-centric education?
Absolutely. Then again, why I was a Democrat most of my life. And we all want the same things, freedom, security, and abundance, and more liberty, smaller government. Well, at least I do. And part of it is taking the power back to localities, back to the county. So yes, the answer to your question is, of course, here. We have a new school that's going up in Kihei, and that's a wonderful thing. We'll have to staff it, but local government as opposed to some monolithic entity. And like you say, our tax dollars are going to Oahu, and we don't get much of a return from it. Then again, we don't. Our children are learning here, and then they're moving to other places because we don't have places for them to work here. So the answer is yes. I would like to see more
Great.
local control
Great.
over education.
Thank you, Robin, for that. And who else has another question? Daniel, why don't you go next?
Aloha, Robin.
Hello.
Okay. Thank you for joining us. I have this question to start off with. As a public representative, it is a duty to face the truth and to act righteously. These islands reflect the lowest voter turnout in the United States. On May 15th, 2019, Dr. David Kianusai gave a presentation to the Maui County Council, evidencing an illegal overthrow of Queen Liliuokalani in 1893 and showing clear violation of domestic and international law with the ongoing illegal United States military occupation of the Kingdom of the Hawaiian Islands. As a candidate for public representation, how do you rectify handling the truth of Dr. Sai's presentation, as well as the works of Keamoku Kapu, Henry Noah, Emilio Gora, Bumpy Kanahele, Leon Su, Dr. Josias, Madame Ruth Bolome, the Ko Hawaii Pai'aina office in Hilo, etc.? How do you rectify the compliance of the law and restoration of occupied lands?
That's a very good question. So a little about my background. So I moved to Nahiku and Hana about 49 years ago. I also lived in Waimanalo, and I stood with Bumpy Kanahele when we took over Makapu'u Point, and for a year then. And I thought I knew a lot about Hawaiian history. By the way, we occupied that land for about a year, so I'm no stranger to the sovereignty movement. I also have studied every bit of Hawaiian history. I'm writing a book called Birth of a Republic. I understand Kianusai's point of view very much, and I'll try and give you a 5-minute version. I have a 2-hour lecture on Hawaiian history. So, like I stated earlier, in 1843, the first 2 kings were absolute monarchs. Okay, we had King Kamehameha I. He appointed John Young and Isaac Davis as his 2 governors, 2 Englishmen. Those were the first 2 appointed governors in Hawaii, the Big Island and on Oahu. They were his guys. Then King Kamehameha II came along. He ended the kapu system, and he ended the religion, and of course they became Christians. But he was very interested in Western government. King Kamehameha was probably the third is probably my most interesting king. It was he created the Great Mahele, which divided the land, and all of the ali'i got their control over their properties. So the King Kamehameha III and the IV created the Great Mahele, and King Kamehameha IV created the Alien Land Sales Act. That's when properties were began to be sold. Now, if you remember in the first Constitution, King Kamehameha III created the Constitution that said all men are equal in the kingdom. From 1843 on, regardless of race, all men were equal in the kingdom. That was amazing because he freed the slaves. There were, and King Kamehameha I did the first census, and that was 38,000 people that lived in these islands after 400 years of war and anyway, this is a 2-hour lecture. I'll try and answer your question. So I disagree with Kianusai on many things. I have done a complete dissection of Umauke'aia, his book, and I've studied everything from Sheldon Dibble to Samuel Kamakau to David Malo, Gavin Dawes, excuse me, and I have a pretty good idea. So we can get up to, he created, the King Kamehameha III created a constitutional republic, and that's a big deal. That's a difference from a complete authoritative government as the first two kings. I'll try and hurry this up. He was the first king to surrender to democratic rule. So each king in successive gave away, it's not that he gave away his dictatorial powers, but they became more as they developed the legislative, the judicial, and the executive branches. By 1886, the people appealed to David Kalakaua. Oh, I'll back up. King Kamehameha V, when he died, he left no heir. So he gave all his power to the legislature. So the legislature was in power by 1887, whenever he died, I forget. And no, that was earlier. And in 1875, there was the Reciprocity Treaty. That was where the Kingdom of Hawaii gave Pu'uloa and Pearl Harbor to the United States. They ceded that land to the United States, and there was the reciprocity treatment. Now, all of those legislatures were comprised of men of many different races. By then, they were 50 years into a republic. It wasn't officially a republic, and I'll get to. So, come time.
Hey, Robin, you got like 30 seconds. Maybe you could share us some last things on that.
Yes. So I'll wrap it up. So, by the time King Kalakaua died, his proxy, adopted sister Liliuokalani, she tried to write a new constitution that gave her more power, and I disagree with Keanu Sia on certain things. One, there was no international law in 1893. The Hague wasn't created till about 1900, and actually the United Nations never passed any laws until 1964. The United Nations wasn't started until 1945. So the same laws applied during the annexation period. In the Republic. This is a very long conversation. So I am diametrically opposed, though I don't want to oppose anyone, but I could point out to you how we actually legally became a republic. I know it's hard for people to understand, but it's a long conversation. The Republic of Hawaii was accepted by all major countries, including Queen Victoria, the Tsars of Russia, and in the National Archives and in the state archives, all of the documents. I have the treaty, I have the Blunt report, and I have the Morgan report. And we have President McKinley's acceptance of the treaty offered. You can go on the DNLR website, and you can see the treaty that was offered by the Republic. So this is quite a subject to. So I love talking about the subject. Okay. I can't. Aloha.
Thank you, Robin. I understand that you certainly have done your homework when it comes to history and all of the things that have occurred in the past and how it affects what's happening right now, especially with the question that Daniel asked. So, Daniel, you opened up then this whole discussion here. But I'd like to move on to another point then.
Yes, I would just like to say one thing. I have to approach it as all people are equal in the state of Hawaii. The sovereignty issue is one thing, and all people, I have to look for the needs for all of us, because we're all here of all races and we're all equal. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Robin. And now, who else would it? Bruce, do you have any other questions before we wrap up? No? Laura?
No, climate change? Anybody? Climate change? Anybody? No, sorry.
We can go there.
I just had one question after, and literally in 30 seconds or less, if you can't just say I can't do it. Yeah. Do you believe that the 1893 rebellion was an illegal overthrow of the Hawaiian government and nation?
I do not. I believe it's a conspiracy theory, and I can talk about it a little more.
That's all I needed. Thank you very much. That's all I was asking for.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. I'm done. Any other questions? No. Bruce, you have one more, and I will
close it out. Yeah, Robin, what would be, if you got elected, what would be your priorities? You'd be a first person, first time in the legislature, not a lot of power. But what would be your priorities of what you would do in the state legislature to benefit your constituents?
Well, obviously, I'm a little different than the others. One, I would be able to chime in and just be a balance. As far as our island and my district, I'm really concerned with the traffic issues, along with the water issues and the farming issues, and homelessness, and the racism and food security and roads. The first thing I would do would be to listen, and then be able to find my place in the legislature. And obviously, there's only 2 or 3, quote, conservatives, though I fall somewhere in the middle. I think just having my energy there to make wise decisions and to kind of give a common sense approach to, hey, well, that's a little too much expenditure on whether it's light rail, and we really need more money for homeless and for education. Being able to say, hey, we can't really afford to fund these types of things when we have these needs that aren't being met. So just being that voice we only have so much of a tax base that we deal with, and I feel like we have a lot of holes in our pockets, and a lot of that money is perhaps going to waste, going to the unions, going to corrupt. I don't know exactly where it goes, but I wouldn't mind sitting there and being a voice of reason and saying, hey, I don't really can't really vote on this idea, as far as and trying to get, I want a Paia bypass. I'd like a shortcut from Maliko to Kihei. And then I'd like a whole farming community along that road that's not down by the ocean, in case the ocean does come up 10 feet in the next 12 years. I would like to see us start developing, not developing per se, but developing agricultural communities, more farming, more natural farming. And like I say again, just learning as I go, being a voice of reason, and being able to push back on some of these particular, borrowing more money from the federal government, and we're just about to borrow another $1 billion. I'd like to be a voice of reason. That's all, and work with my constituents and the people, and having a group of people around me that could be in my ear all the time, like I'm why I'm here. Why I don't know why Linda Coit isn't here talking to us, but I want to be able to talk to people all the time, and be a hub for great ideas, and help make those great ideas come true.
Great. Thank you, Robin, for that. I greatly appreciate it. And also for the vision that you just provided. It certainly gives us more insight as to what you would like to see.
Yes.
And in terms of people wanting to connect more with you or your platform, could you give then our viewers a little bit of information about how they can connect with your website and any donations that they might be interested in?
Sure. I've just created a new Robin Vanderpool page on Facebook. It's pretty blank, and I've just got a few people, and it's centered around this. I'm still building my website, robinvanderpool.com and Vote Vanderpool 2020. So I have a Vote Vanderpool page that will be launched pretty soon, and I'm fully funded already. I'm only allowed $22,000 for my funding, and I'm already there from myself. And I have a very wealthy friend who wants nothing from me. So that's just for mailers and for posters. And I'm not here to make any money. I'm here for the reasons that we all spoke of, for our island, and so that we have clean air, clean water, and food security. That is my main concern, and less traffic.